In this video we're going to look at algebraic fractions. In the first example, the denominator, so the piece of the fraction that is at the bottom, are going to be whole numbers. In example number 2, these are slightly more difficult and they result in a quadratic equation. Okay, there's algebra, so there's letters and numbers on the bottom, so that is how the two examples are different. Okay, but we approach them the exact same way. An important term that we need to understand in this video, and it's something that I'll be talking about throughout, is the lowest common denominator. Okay, and all that means is a number that, say for example, our denominators here are 4 and 5, the lowest common denominator is a number that both 4 and 5 divides into evenly, and also it's the lowest number that both of these numbers divide into. Okay, so if you think about all of the multiples of, we'll go with the bigger number, 5. 4 doesn't divide into 5, so that's not the lowest common denominator. The next one is 10, 4 doesn't divide into 10. The next one is 15, 4 doesn't divide into 15. The next one is 20, and we can agree there that 4 does in fact divide into 20 as well. So our lowest common denominator in this question is 20. So next up we want to remove this denominator because it is an equation. Okay, and the reason I know it's an equation is because of this equal sign in the middle. So we're actually trying to solve for x. Okay, so the way that we do that is we're going to multiply everything by the lowest common denominator. Okay, now we've already discussed that the lowest common denominator is 20. So when we multiply both sides by the lowest common denominator, or multiply everything by the lowest common denominator, that should ensure that the denominators actually disappear. Okay, so we know that 4 goes into 25 times. So 4 goes into 25 times. So actually what we're left with is 5 times 3x, the numerator. And we also know that 5 goes into 24 times. So we're going to multiply this side by 4. So as you can see, the denominators actually have disappeared. Now we're going to remove those brackets because eventually we want to get an answer. Our answer should look like x equals a number. Okay, so we're going to solve this, and we have to remove all these brackets. So 5 times 3x is 15x, 4 times 4x is 16x, and 4 times minus 1 is minus 4. Okay, reminding ourselves it's an equation, so our x's come to one side and our numbers go to the other. So I want to get rid of the 16x from this side, so I'm going to take 16x away, and we're left with minus 1x equals minus 4. If minus 1x is equal to minus 4, then that must mean that x equals plus 4. And that is the answer to our first question. Okay, so we have solved this algebraic fraction equation by finding the lowest common denominator and multiplying by that. Okay, moving on to the example number 2. This one's a little bit different because the denominator is made up of numbers and letters. Okay, a way that we could approach this is the same. We just find the lowest common denominator. If you go back to the first example, you'll see that if we multiply 4 by 5, we will actually get 20, and that is our lowest common denominator. Since we don't know what x is, we're going to repeat that. We're going to actually just multiply these two numbers together, because x is just a number that we don't know. Okay, if there's a number here with no denominator, or it's a whole number, we simply make it a fraction by putting it over 1. Okay, so our common denominator here is lowest, and I'm just going to write LCD, lowest common denominator. We're just going to multiply the denominators together. Okay, x plus 1 multiplied by 5, and that 1 there, but we don't need to write that because if you multiply anything by 1, you'll just get the same answer. Okay, so we're going to rewrite this question, and then to remove those denominators, we're going to multiply by the lowest common denominator. Okay, so we're multiplying by x plus 1 by 5. The same with this one, x plus 1 by 5. And the same with this one, x plus 1 by 5. Okay. If you wanted to multiply that by the 1 as well, that's absolutely fine. You will still get the same answer. Okay. As you can see here, this goes into this once, so you're left with 5 times 1. The 5 goes into the 5 once, so you're left with x times x plus 1. And over on this side, the 1 is irrelevant. Anything divided by 1 is just itself. So we're left with 1 times x plus 1 times 5. Okay, and division by 1, it won't make a difference to the answer. Okay, now we're going to look at removing all these brackets. 5 times 1 is 5. X by x is x squared. X by 1 is 1x. 1 by x is 1x. And 1 by 1 is 1. And that's still being multiplied by 5. We're going to take an extra step here. 5 by 1x is 5x. And 5 by 1 is 5. So normally we're used to looking at it the other way around, but you take the same approach. Number outside is multiplied by each one inside. So that's where the 5x plus 5 comes from. Okay, I'm recognizing here that this is a quadratic equation because of this square term. And for that reason, everything comes to the left-hand side, as opposed to a linear equation where the letters come to one side and the numbers go to the other. In this one, it's a quadratic, so everything comes to the left-hand side and your answer should be equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to bring this 5x over, and I do that by taking 5x away from both sides. Notice how I'm writing the x term under the x term on the left-hand side. So what I'm left with is x squared, 1x minus 5x is minus 4x. I still have that plus 5 equals and 5. Okay, the 5x's will cancel. I'm going to get rid of that plus 5 on the right hand side by taking 5 away, and so I'm left with x squared minus 4x, and those actually both cancel out, so I'm left with equals 0. Okay, in order to solve quadratic equations we must factorize. So in this case this is highest common factor, so our highest common factor here is x, so we write that outside the bracket and then divide each term by that. X into x squared goes x times, x into minus 4x goes minus 4 times, and we let that equal to 0. At this point, we split it up, okay? So we say x equals 0, so this equals 0, or you can put that into a bracket if you like. So the first bracket equals 0, or the second bracket equals 0. And as you can see, this is not quite solved yet, as it's not in the form x equals a number. So we're going to add 4 to both sides to actually find our answer. So x equals 4. Okay, in this case, because it's a quadratic, we have two answers, so two possible values for x that satisfy this equation: x equals 0 or x equals 4.